Hello everybody, I'm Antonia and this is Noel and we are from Boxtail Soup Theatre Company and it's raining today, so there's rain hitting the roof on the studio. We wanted to start the vlog in Noel's new way, which is to say...
Yes, so just to say that first of all, thank you to everybody who's subscribed and thank you to everybody who's joined us recently here on this YouTube channel. We wanted to say that it's a real help to us if you are watching these videos, and thank you, to everybody who is watching. It's a help to us if you leave us a thumbs up, it's a help to us if you leave us a comment, and it's a big help to us if you subscribe. And also, it's a help to us if you follow on other social media channels as well. As we've mentioned before, one of the most difficult things for us is making sure that we get the word out and spread the word about the shows and about the work that we're doing. And being able to do that on social media is a really, really big help. The sad fact is that the way it works is the more followers you have and the more interaction you have, the further that message is able to spread. So if you don't already follow us on Twitter or Instagram or on TikTok or anything like that, please do consider having a look, going over there and giving us a follow. Even if you don't really use that platform, it's really helpful to us. We'd really appreciate it.
So that's all the things that are helpful to us.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Northern.
I should point out as well, I was going to begin this vlog, but I've now been banned from doing it because I always mess up the beginning. So yeah, that's why.
It will always be me starting and then Noel will carry on.
Antonia has to do the introduction.
You get the fear, I feel like. I can see it in your eyes. You start and then he just starts laughing because he just
messed up.
This week we're going to be talking about our Gulliver filmed project, which is called Gulliver Exploded. I mean, that was a working title, but I quite like it. I feel like it's going to stick.
Yeah, and we mean that in the sense of like exploded, like extruded. When you look at one of those videos, one of those images of a mechanical part that's been extruded and everything's been taken apart.
And you can see all the insides.
Yeah, that's the sense in which we mean exploded.
Exactly. This project came about because I can't even remember what it was, we applied to the Genesis Foundation for a Genesis Kickstart Fund grant. We had this idea that we wanted to create a filmed version of Gulliver, and we wanted to do it really well. We didn't want to just put a camera at the back of a show like we do generally for archive purposes. We wanted to have dedicated time where we could film the show from multiple angles, get some different shots, so that for anybody who couldn't physically come to the show for whatever reason, they would still get a really decent experience of watching the adaptation, and it wouldn't feel like a kind of second-class citizen compared to the live show. It would be different rather than worse or better than.
So we didn't want to apply and just to do sort of the usual sort of work that we do. We wanted to try and do something a little bit different with this grant. And like you're saying, and we've said before on here, one of the challenges about trying to film your work, if you're going to put it online for a company of our size, is that we don't have the same resources as, say, the National Theatre, where they'll have an audience in and they'll have like a multi-camera setup and a director and someone mixing it live, and they've got 18 cameras on it. It's just not physically possible for us to do that. So the challenge was to work out a way that we could do something that perhaps they couldn't. And so what we came up with was this concept of Gulliver Exploded. So we had, again, as we mentioned in the previous vlog when we were actually there doing the filming in Cheltenham, we had, was it 2 days?
Yes, we had 2 full days, courtesy of the Everyman, who again we have to thank hugely because they gave us the Irving studio space for free for those 2 days, so huge thank you to them.
Mm-hmm. So because we were performing the show there, it was all set up. We had, the full lighting rig and everything it was all plotted in so we could do the show as it was in the studio. But over those 2 days, we had free reign of the space, and we had 2 cameras in, 2 professional cameramen in to shoot the show, and we shot it from multiple angles and were able to do it multiple times to try and get as much coverage as we possibly could.
And to get some interesting shots as well. We decided that given that the show, if you've seen it, you'll know, and even if you haven't, we've talked about it, has these sea shanty moments in it, which are kind of transitional moments. So we wanted to get some interesting camera work on those. So we did quite a lot of pickups and that kind of thing to get some variety within those shots.
The danger is, I find, if you're just filming something by sticking a camera at the back, whether you've got an audience in there or not, but it doesn't necessarily translate brilliantly. It can make it seem very flat. It's not the same experience as sitting there in the audience and kind of having it happen in front of you. So being able to move around a little more in the space and being able to go a little closer with some shots or shoot it
without
from more.
worrying about getting in the way of an audience member.
Yeah, that helps to bring it to life on screen, I hope.
Yeah, I think we wanted to lean into the fact that it was a different thing. It's very different to watch a filmed piece of theatre. Obviously, this is a silly thing to say, really, than watching it live. But we wanted to lean into that rather than it being a negative, we wanted to try and turn it into a positive. We've been editing the version that we've, all the footage that we've got, and so far we've done Noel's done a rough first edit. We're now going through it together to do the second edit, and it's looking really great. We're really pleased with it. It's definitely a different way of experiencing the show.
The quality of the footage and having people in there with professional cameras and everything really means that it looks great.
It does. Then, as an addition then to that, we didn't want to just make a film. We wanted to add to that and make value-added content for various participants.
So I think that, as I was saying before, thinking about trying to do something a little bit different, or something that we were able to do because of the way that we work. Yes, we've got this filmed version of the show, but as you imagine, you get a similar thing from other filmed productions that are done with multiple cameras. We wanted to kind of add a bit of value on top of that, and the way that we thought we could do that was this sense of exploding the show by using everything that we have done in creating the show and everything that we've done in the run-up to the show.
I think what you mean by that is the fact that I don't think it's unique, but we make everything as well as performing it, as we take the show from the very, very first idea of the adaptation all the way through to the performance. So therefore we have records of how we make all the puppets, how we design the show. As you all know, you've been watching it on the YouTube channel, and we've kept additional footage to that as well. So we wanted to be able to utilise all of that in effectively a kind of online, I like to think of it as a sort of virtual Q&A with proper illustrative content. So
I suppose it's a little bit like, the people who I've tried to explain it to have described it like a special edition of a DVD.
Yeah, where you've got the
a lot
DVD
of extra
extras,
content. Yeah, and you can go into the menus and you can kind of explore all of that content. That was the idea that we wanted to.
But we've taken that kind of one step further, because the idea is that this content will be interactive. So you explain, because you're better at that than me, how that will work.
Yeah, so we didn't want to just present it in that way as like, okay, here's the performance, and then here's a big list of other stuff.
A menu of options.
Yeah. We wanted to make something that was just a little bit more engaging than that, and a little bit more fun. So what we started to investigate was interactive video, so that potentially you could be watching a video like this, and I'll try and do some examples here so that I can demonstrate what we mean. You could be watching a video like this, and at a certain point, that video would maybe split in two, and then you'd have a couple of options appear on the screen. Please bear in mind that if I've put any options on the screen they're not active, you can't actually click on them, so please don't get frustrated or leave us any comments saying it doesn't work. So the idea would be that these options would appear on screen, and then you could then take a kind of branching path depending on what you were interested in and what you wanted to know more about.
So for example, we would have part of the menu would be puppets, and if you wanted to learn how we made the puppets, you'd go into the first video, which would be generally talking about how we make the puppets, what kind of materials we make them from, and then at some point it might come up with Lilliputians, Little Gulliver, Struldbrug, Houyhnheims, and you'd be able to click on any one of those to learn a bit more about how we specifically made the Lilliputians. And when you're in the Lilliputians, if you want to specifically know how I did the hair, you might at some point be able to click and say, I want to know how you did the hair, and that would then come up. So it would, and then you could go back at any point to the...
Yeah, so these videos are then interconnected. So if you're interested in the Houyhnheim, the horse puppets, you could go in, have a look at them, and then you might decide that, well, I'd actually like to see a little bit of that scene where they're used, and you'd be able to follow that branch.
It's like a giant flow chart, I feel like.
Yeah, it is. Actually, in planning it out, that's what it looks like, is a really sort of complicated circular flow chart with all these different interconnecting links. But the idea is that you would be able to interact with it at your own pace, and it's the stuff that interests each individual viewer that they could then go and find out more about. So we're quite excited about trying that out.
We are, and you've done some demonstrations for me, and it really is, it is really cool. It is interesting because it means that you don't have to then trawl through information on, I don't know, if you're not particularly interested in the music, you don't have to learn about that, or if you're not particularly interested in the puppetry, you can pick the different bits that, as you say, are uniquely interesting.
And you can always go back at any time and kind of, take a different path and explore something else, or come back and look at something else.
At one point, we had considered, during the video of the show itself, so during the film, you could then, like when you're in Lilliput, a thing coming up saying, learn more about how we made this Lilliputian puppet. Having kind of had a play with that, what we found, it frustrated us, even though we know the show. We were like, well, no, I want to watch this show without interruptions, and then I want to be able to go and learn about the things after. So we've decided to keep the two things separate, so that if you do just want to watch the show, you can, but then if you want to mine all the additional content, you can do that. Mm-hmm. One of the ideas behind this is also to make the show more accessible. So although these will probably be added in stages, because it obviously takes time to do them all, we are going to make sure that there's going to be captioning, there'll be BSL interpretation, there'll be we're going to look into it, I'm still not quite sure how you do it, but audio description, just to make the show as accessible to as many people as possible. And the other side of it is that we wanted to be able to offer it as an educational tool. Having both studied drama and theatre and English when we were at school, we remember, the modules have stayed sort of relatively similar. We have a lot of friends who are teachers, and given that this is still the kind of thing that students are having to learn about, we want to also make it available to schools. So for that, there will be schemes of work and things available in addition to that as well.
Yes, so we'll provide something that they can work along with, using these videos as the kind of resource to help them go along with these lesson plans and this.
So it's got a lot of, we hope, it's got a lot of scope and a lot of interesting different ways that different kinds of people can interact with it.
And it means that people who can't physically come along to see the show, whether that's because they're in the UK and we're not coming near them, or whether it's because they're anywhere else in the world, it means that they can watch the show, and hopefully, even though it's not necessarily the same experience as watching it live, it's still a good version of a good representation of the show itself.
So I think that's it really. That's in essence what the show is about. What the project is about.
Yes. So we're excited about it. It's something new for us. We're kind of excited to see how people interact with it and what kind of impact it will have, and what the feedback is. So we're excited to we're getting closer and closer to pushing it out there, and we can't wait to see what happens with it.
So once again, we need to say a massive thank you to the Genesis Kickstart Fund, which is supplied by the Genesis Foundation, because without that this project would not have happened in any way, shape or form. So a huge thank you to them, and it really is a wonderful way for us to start to try and reach new audiences and explore different ways of sharing our work with you all. And the last thing we wanted to do is we wanted to ask you a question that will also involve you being able to click on a
we thought we'd just try out a tiny little bit of interactive video, insofar as that's possible on YouTube.
Yes, which is different.
Which is a little bit limited. But when we were talking about the project, and as we've gone along with it, one of the questions that's come up quite frequently is whether watching a show online and being able to stream a show has any impact on an audience then coming to see it live. Whether it means that people are more likely or less likely to come and see it live. So we thought that for a bit of fun, at the end of this video, to give you an example of the way it's going to work, we'd also just ask you a question.
But before we do that, just to remind you again to give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment, subscribe to the channel, check out our other social media. Any of those things are a huge help to us. Thank you very much.
So the question is this. You're going to have two options, and what we'd like to know is, if you watched an online version, or perhaps you have watched various online versions of theatre shows or musicals, if you watched an online version of a show and you really enjoyed it, does that make you more or less likely to go and see that show live in person? So those are your two options. If you've seen the show online, are you more or less likely to go and watch that show in person? Let us know by clicking on the relevant link and maybe giving a thumbs up to whichever video you chose. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next time.